This is Studio 809.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Outdoors Hiking Bob podcast. I am your host, Hiking Bob Falcone, and you can find me on my website at hikingbob.com, which has links to my social media, my columns at the Colorado Springs Independent, my other podcasts that we've done here, my photography website. And by the way, Christmas is coming. All the holidays are coming. All the winter holidays are coming. Gift-giving season is coming. What better gift than a nice photograph from my photography store? And you don't have to get it just for something hanging on the wall. They can have blankets made, you can all kinds of stuff, but you just click on
that's cool.
Yeah, it's pretty neat stuff. I've had all kinds of stuff. In any case, go to hikingbob.com and click the links there and see what I've got. Also, don't forget that there's a newsletter you can sign up for that I put out about once a week. And also, if you have a comment or question or suggestion for Kevin or I, you can just make it right there. Just drop us a line. Speaking of Kevin, Wild Westendorf is here today.
Hey everyone, Kevin Wild Westendorf is here, and you can find me on social media, primarily Facebook and Instagram at Wild Westendorf, and my website, which is www.wildwestendorf.com.
Speaking of social media, I think it's time for Twitter to just take a dump.
Yeah. Oh man, it's been on fire for a while, but the recent few weeks, it's oof.
Well, and let's say that a change in ownership is not always a good thing.
Yeah, I finally had to set some filters to mute out certain words and names because I was just getting tired of seeing every other tweet with that name.
Yeah.
And stuff. I was like, I just want to go back to old Twitter where it was just dumb fun, a little drama occasionally, but yeah.
And let me just start off by saying that, it's a privately owned company. The owner can do whatever he wants, which, guess what? He is, and that's okay. And you may agree with what he's got on there. You may disagree with what he's got on there. Nobody can argue that it is definitely a big change from where it's been.
Yeah.
There's one change I heard that was good, and we were not going to dwell on this, but one change I heard that was really good was if it's a parody of somebody or something, if it doesn't say it in the description, it's being banned.
Which makes sense.
Well, I kind of like that because before you didn't know if you were talking to a real person or a phony person because that blue check mark thing, which that's gone off the rails, didn't always work because it was very difficult to get a blue check mark. Yeah. So in any case, speaking of social media, Twitter is taking a change. I don't know. And we can talk all year about social media, but that's not what we're here for. We participate in social media. I think you and I participate for the same reasons. It's to promote the podcast, the columns, and things like that. I rarely ever get into an exchange of things with people on there.
No, I don't.
More Facebook than I do on Twitter or Instagram. A little bit of give and take there. Instagram is mostly to promote my photos and stuff like that. And I know you use it and use it very well with your stories and stuff like that. But Twitter's a different animal altogether, and it was actually the first social media I actually used.
Oh, okay.
But it's not going to be the last one I use because it's going to go first.
Yeah.
So in any case, you can find me at hikingbob.com and Kevin at wildwestendorf.com. So just quickly, Kevin, I want to talk about last week's podcast, which is one I recorded with my mom. And I know people who, it's kind of an eye roller when people say, oh, you had your parents on or something like that, kind of a hack premise. But, I stay true to the purpose of this podcast, which is outdoor recreation. And we talked to my mom about her use of outdoor recreation. She's 85 years old, just turned 85, which is why I was back east. And she lives independently. She walks every day. She's outside every day. And we talked about that. So if you haven't had a chance to listen to that, even if you're not 85 or going to be anywhere near 85 for a while, go back and listen to that because she's done that for quite a bit of time and really credits her for her mental and physical health.
I'm sure. Yeah.
And so if you all haven't listened to that, just go back and look it up in the archives and find it there. And I think that everybody will find something good to be there. I really appreciate the very nice, kind comments I've gotten from so many people about that, how they inspired her. Yeah, it's been wonderful. And it was really nice to hear from people and how much they liked it. And my mom was nervous doing it because she's like, I don't do this stuff. I said, just sit there and I'll ask you questions and you just answer them and you just talk. And she did, and it was just wonderful. So, but very many thanks to everybody who had really nice comments and really found something enjoyable and inspiring out of that podcast. So really do appreciate it. Speaking of podcasts, it's the Give campaign season has started with the local Give campaign and all the nonprofits that are part of that. I'm a media partner with that. So in the next several weeks, you'll be hearing podcasts with some of those groups will be on here. So Kevin may not be on here as often as usual because we'll be bringing in a lot of those groups because this is a chance for them to publicize what they do and why you should support them. And we get caught up on some of these organizations that we have on here normally, but we get caught up with them. So over the next, the rest of November and into December, we'll have some of those groups on here. So kind of keep an eye on that if you're local, or you don't even have to be local to give to the Give campaign. But, if you're local, you obviously are more aware of what we're doing and stuff like that. But these are all going to be groups that have some connection to outdoor recreation. I think, Kevin, I'm recording for the rest of this week 3 more podcasts this week.
Oh, wow.
And I got a couple more lined. I'm working on lining some up for next week. So got to be pretty busy here in the old compound, as I like to call it. And we'll get some more podcasts out to you. Some pretty interesting stuff. Some guests will come on. We're also going to mix in there some guests who are not part of the Give campaign, but we've been wanting to talk to you about some exciting new stuff that's going on in the area. So next couple of months going to be pretty interesting, and we'll have everybody there. Kevin, this past weekend was the end of daylight savings time and the beginning of standard time. Oh yeah. You know it's funny. It was funny because somebody posted a picture of that. They like watches, and I like watches too, but they have a collection of watches, and they had a picture of their thing. Goes, yeah, I'm a watch collector, and I hate daylight savings time. I'm going, well, that's ending, so why are you so mad? I think they got their thing confused. No, not daylight savings time. We're now on standard time. And it takes some getting used to because now it's getting darker earlier. I posted in my column at the Indy over the weekend that, by the way, if you're planning stuff, don't forget it's going to get darker about an hour early because it's easy to forget that. We've been leading up to get dark around 6, and now it's like, oh, it's 5. And it's obviously kind of, between now and the middle of December, or 21st, 20th, somewhere in there in December, it's going to be 4 o'clock before it gets dark. So if you're planning your hikes and stuff like that, just remember it's getting darker earlier. So this may not be the time for the 10 or 12 mile hikes unless you get started at the crack of dawn because you take you all day to do something like that. Kevin, you got anything going on or anything cool you want to relate to us or anything before we head on into the other topics we had?
If you haven't listened, Bob and I did do a podcast about daylight savings time. I feel like it was back in this past spring because it feels like it was recent.
We did it in March.
Yep.
Yeah, when we talked about going to daylight savings time.
And so I got a better understanding about it, especially for folks who live further up north. Which I came away from that thinking it should be a states thing. But I'm totally in favor of keeping daylight saving time so we can just have a little bit of daylight just a little bit further in the end of the day. Plus, I'm just used to recording a podcast and being able to look in your backyard, but it's pitch black out there now.
Don't see anything out back there. Yeah, every year, twice a year now, there's always a big argument about, I hate daylight savings time. I hate standard time. I don't want to change my clocks. And I get it. It's kind of a pain in the neck. Although, let's think about this for a second. It used to be that you'd have to get up, the night before you went to bed, you'd have to go and change every single clock in the house. And, of course, you always forgot one.
Yeah.
So there's always something that was wrong. The next day, you'd have to go back and change it. Now with cell phones, change on their own.
Exactly.
Computers, change on their own. So many connected devices, change on their own. Anything connected to the internet and your Wi-Fi, everything changes on its own. So it's not as big of a pain in the neck. And there's always there's always a study that says accidents increase and this increases. And maybe it's true, maybe it's not. I don't want to be like one of those people who deny science or anything like that. Unless I know more about those surveys or stuff like that, I'm always suspicious about. We interviewed 30 people, and of course that means that across the country there's.
Oh yeah.
Like, okay, let's talk a little bit about how you do this. It's like polling. Polling is junk science as far as I'm concerned.
It totally is.
It's totally garbage science. It's inaccurate and just garbage science, and pollsters make a crap load of money telling people how things are going to happen, and they rarely ever go the way they say they are. But in any case, we still have what we have.
Yeah.
And there's always a move where we're going to make daylight savings time permanent, or we're going to make standard time permanent. And you and I talked about it, and then definitely in that last episode we talked about back in March, there are issues with making daylight savings time permanent.
Yeah.
Especially in the northern parts of the country, where the sun may not show up till 9 o'clock in the morning, and that could be more dangerous for kids, and all kinds of issues. But in any case, here we are. It's going to get light a little earlier. It's going to get dark a little earlier. The days are getting shorter regardless of the amount of daylight hours, because if I say days are getting shorter, somebody's going to yell at me and say, it's still 24 hours, dummy. I know. But the number of hours of daylight are getting shorter till about the winter solstice, and then we start getting longer again. And, it just is what it is. But it's an adjustment. You have to remember to go out earlier. Like today, I was like, oh man, it's going to get dark at 5. If I'm going to go do anything, I gotta get on it now. Not like 6 like it was just yesterday. It was, not dark till 6 o'clock. So it's an adjustment, but be careful out there and remember that that's going to happen.
And you bring up a great point about how now everything is connected and smart and all that. So all the clocks change every time. But every year I get myself on Monday morning when I'm going to work, and I glance down at the clock on the car.
The one in the car you always forget.
And there's that moment of panic and like, oh no, I'm an hour late to work. Like I thought I got up on time. How? Like what happened and stuff. And it takes a couple seconds, but those couple seconds feel like forever.
Right.
And then it clicks. It's like, oh yeah, I forgot to change the clock in the car.
Well, the worst, at least this time of the year, when you set your clock back, the worst you could be is an hour early.
Yeah.
Because your clock will say 8 o'clock when it's actually 7 o'clock. So you're actually going to get to work an hour early. And I get it. I mean, I get it's an inconvenience. I guess it's an adjustment. But we've been, come on, this isn't like we started doing this yesterday. We've been doing it for, 50 years or 60, I don't know. Longer than I've been alive, and like I tell you before, Kevin, very few people get to be my age. But it's been going on for a long time. I understand people kind of grumbling about it, but the people who just get wild, crazy, upset about it just always mystified me. Like,
oh yeah.
I guess on the other hand, if that's the biggest thing in your life you're concerned about, you're leading a really good life. If your biggest concern is changing the clocks.
Yeah, I remember a few years ago, I watched a comedian doing his set, and he brought that up, and he did some exaggerated like gestures and comments and stuff, and he stops and goes, "It's 1 hour,"
and you're used to it in a couple of days. So, if it bothers you, that's fine. Everybody's allowed to have whatever bothers them, bother them, and that's okay. It doesn't bother me, and it never has. It's never been an issue for me. So. It is what it is. We have what we have. We're going to have what we have. I personally think that no movement to get rid of it, get rid of one or get rid of the other, make one permanent one. I don't think anything's going to move off center line anytime in the future.
Oh, yeah.
Twice a year, we're going to make a big deal about it. And it's going to die down till the next time we change clocks, and we'll make a big deal about it again. But I don't think anything's going to change anytime soon. So all this angst over it, I think, is just a lot of wasted energy. There's a whole lot more stuff we need to worry about.
Exactly.
And like, how about we talk about there's no water anymore?
Ooh, yeah.
Get into that argument. In any case, Kevin, yesterday you and I beat out daylight savings time by going on a pretty cool hike.
Oh, it was great.
So my column last week in The Independent was about Fisher's Peak State Park, which is we have 43 state parks. It's the 42nd one. So it's relatively new. It's only been open for 2 years. Just recently, right before Halloween, opened 11 more miles of trails. Now, up until then, they only had like a couple miles of trails. And they weren't all that exciting, to be honest with you. And I've written about them in my column. I've had the park manager down there on the podcast several times. We talked about it, and my personal opinion was it wasn't worth a special 1.5 to 2 hour drive to go down there just to try these few little trails that they had. But they opened up 11 more miles of trails, and Kevin and I are looking at each other going, we should go check this out.
Yeah.
And we did. We went down there yesterday, and we had a great hike. My GPS came in at 9.82 miles. And a couple thousand feet of elevation gain. And it was nice. I mean, it was a beautiful day anyway. We just had wonderful weather down there.
Yeah.
And for those who don't know, this is near the town of Trinidad, which is, near the New Mexico-Colorado border. As a matter of fact, the park entrance is 11 miles north of the border. So this is down there a ways, and the park goes all the way down to the New Mexico border. So it is a big park. We're talking about a tiny, tiny percentage of it that's been developed, and then there's a lot more on the way. But we did a hike, and the icon of this is Fisher's Peak, which is a big, flat mesa that dominates the skyline for quite a few miles as you're driving down I-25 or coming in from any direction. It dominates the skyline, and it dominated this trail. I mean, it loomed over us on most of this hike.
Oh, yeah.
And so what Kevin and I did, and I'll have Kevin give his thoughts on here, but we hiked up what's called the Challenge Trail, which is 1.5 miles of pure misery.
Yeah.
Pretty much straight up on an old ranch road. And from there we got to an intersection where 4 trails come together, and one of which went further up towards Fisher's Peak. Now, you can't get to the top of Fisher's Peak yet, but they say that that'll be done by next year, which they're moving really fast on this. But we had a great hike, Kevin. It was just awesome. Why don't you tell people what you thought about it?
I'm not saying I'm bored of the Pikes Peak region. I never will be, but I know the area so well. So when I get a chance to do a new hike, like I did about a month ago when I went to the Skagway power plant, that was just a part of the excitement of that was that it's a new hike. It's a new trail. So when I got a chance to go to Fisher's Peak with Bob, I jumped on it. And like he had mentioned, I hadn't gone down there yet because it opened in October of 2020, and I hadn't gone down there yet. I've driven by a few times, but the weather was always bad, so I just never did a little pit stop there. But I just didn't want to do the 2-hour drive for 2 miles of hiking. Now, Trinidad's a cool little town, especially in a recent years. There's really cool stuff developing there. So, of course, I don't mind a stop there, but I'm not going to drive 2 hours just to get lunch somewhere and then come back. So with the 11 new miles, that makes it worth it. You can make an entire day of it, and then you can go to Trinidad to get lunch or a dinner, and then you drive home afterward. I'm really, really excited for when they finish the trail to the summit of Fisher's Peak and the potential of the rest of the park, because the trails are in a tiny part of the overall area.
And when I interviewed the park manager last time, we actually did kind of a walking tour, a driving tour. We drove to different places, and I had her describe where we were and what her vision was for this part or that part. So they've got campgrounds planned. There's no camping there now. There's not a campsite to be seen. They've got campgrounds planned. They've got one campground that's actually going to be kind of geared for equestrian users. This park is so huge that they're going to have that. They're going to have regular campgrounds. They're going to have RV-type campgrounds. They're going to have backcountry camping. All of these things are planned for this park. And my plan is that I will be having the park manager on the podcast again very soon. So keep an eye out for that. They're moving on this at really lightning speed. And to give people an idea how this works, when Colorado Parks and Wildlife acquires land for a park, there's a process.
Yeah.
They survey the park, kind of figure out what's in there, and then they go and do a master plan process, which developing a master plan, getting public input on a master plan, doing a survey on the master plan, finalizing the master plan, can take up to a year. So nothing's happening then. They're just doing that. And then after that, it takes several years to build out any part of the master plan. In some places, they're still building.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, like Cheyenne Mountain State Park, which was 40th State Park. They just now put in cabins on the campground there that were in the master plan. They just now got to that part of the master plan. So a lot of it's funding, which as we know is not, in Colorado is not typically tax supported. It's all fees and entry fees and hunting licenses and fishing licenses and all that kind of stuff. In this case, they're moving along pretty quickly. They were opening trails while they were actually developing the master plan. And they did get a one-time allocation of some tax money, and I don't remember how much it was, to kind of get things started, like seed money to get things started. So they're really moving along. For the fact that this park was declared a park, dedicated as a park in the spring of 2020, and was open with limited resources by October of 2020, and then by October of 2022 has 11 miles of trails and a beautiful parking area with not one but 2 sets of bathrooms, which is a big deal, and paved parking, not even just a dirt lot. Talked about how fast they're moving with this, and and the fact that they're going to have a trail to the top of Fisher's Peak by next year, which is what they stated in their press release, is pretty impressive.
Extremely impressive, yeah.
And I think that hike's going to be a bear of a hike. I think it's going to be like the Dixon Trail in Cheyenne Mountain. It's going to be like a 14, 15-mile round-trip hike up there.
Yeah.
I'm in. I know you're in too. It's like, we're doing this. So they're moving really fast. Now, of course, it's going to take years to build out everything. It's how much funding does CPW have, and can they put into this, and, other priorities. It's Colorado Parks and Wildlife is like any other big state bureaucracy. It takes a while for things to happen, but they, really moving fast. Now, some of this is due to the Governor Polis, who, one of his things was, I want this park, I want it open as fast as possible. I want somebody in there as soon as possible. As a user, you and I, that is awesome.
Yeah.
As a park manager and part of the bureaucracy, and I hate to use bureaucracy because it had bad connotations, but it is what it is. That could be kind of a nightmare. Like, the governor wants this to happen. How do we make this happen,
I forgot about that part.
Yeah. But to his credit, I think he and I haven't talked to the governor about this, obviously, but I think that his thinking is like a lot of people. Well, you've made this a park. I don't want to wait 5, 6, 7 years. I want to get in there now. Now, obviously, everybody recognizes you can't go in there right away. But the fact that we've got 11 miles of trails within 2 years of the place opening, and a master plan process going on at the same time, and that parking lot we talked about was built, then got completely destroyed by a flood, had to be rebuilt. All that in the space of 2 years is pretty impressive stuff.
And what I think is great is, like, I know building out trails is not cheap, but I think that's very smart for them to kind of build the trails along with building the master plan, because it gets people into the park and it gets people interested in being like, okay, I saw the press release, we have a new state park, but there's no trails, and it became a state park 4 years ago, and then you forget about it. So by creating these trails, you're generating a ton of interest and creating support too.
Right. And the other thing is and you mentioned Trinidad, and Trinidad's a little town down there, just, it's a border town, you could call it. They've really gotten behind this. They obviously see the economic benefits, but not just that. Trinidad State College developed a trail building and stewardship program.
That's right. I forgot about that.
Using the students, this is your project, go build trails. They get education on it, because let's face it, this kind of stuff is a growing industry, so to speak. There's more and more, as we've been known since the pandemic, and even before that, but the pandemic really brought it up even faster, was there is a shortage of, in many places, outdoor recreational opportunities. And not only that, but there's a shortage of people who know what they're doing. That's one of the issues we have with people doing stupid stuff like building their own trails. They have no idea what they're doing, and they're making things worse. So you've got this opportunity there to learn how to do it, and you can be a part of building this new state park. So they've really embraced this, and they've actually come forward. They're building more of their own trails down there within the city. So this is really a big renaissance, I think, for Trinidad, which is a nice, quaint little town, I guess is the best way to describe it. A nice little town. And kind of down there and kind of sometimes forgotten, but I think this is really going to help the whole town of Trinidad, and they are solidly behind this. That town really likes what CPW is doing with building the state park, and they really were part of the leaders in getting this land acquired to do it. Not necessarily money-wise, because it was a bunch of money, but there were people like the Land Conservancy and Trust for Public Land, or Nature Conservancy, Trust for Public Land, Great Outdoors Colorado with lottery money. That's where a lot of the money came from to make this happen. But otherwise, those folks down there have been like, yeah, we are on board. Let's get us a state park. Let's open. They can see that mountain behind them.
Oh, yeah.
Like I said, it towers over the city. And like, let's get this thing. And it's only 9,600 feet. You would think it's a whole lot taller. But let's get this built. And we talked to a Trinidad resident yesterday.
Yeah.
That gentleman who was riding his bike uphill. More power to him. And he and I and Kevin chatted for a little bit. And really gave us some insight into how excited he is as a resident down there to see this open up. And, you don't always see that kind of enthusiasm on a wide basis, but apparently that's what's going on down there.
And as we were coming down, because it was later in the day, we were seeing many, like, more and more users of the trail. Saw a ton of mountain bikers. And I like how they designated the trails to where there's one that is mountain bike only, then there's one that's mountain bike only uphill, but can be shared with the hikers. And then there's one that's hikers only. So it kind of gives everyone their own space without worry of conflict or running into each other. I especially like the fact that if I decided to go up the 2 Lone Cub trails, I don't have to worry about a mountain bike just barreling down. I'm sure that's a lot of fun, but it's just nice to kind of be less alert about that.
Well, the Upper Lone Cub Trail, we'll go into details on it. That is both ways for cyclists.
That's right. You're
but
right.
The
you're
lower one is uphill only for cyclists, and then that meets up with the other trail, the Poison Canyon Trail. That's bicyclists only and downhill only for bicyclists. And then there's another trail on the other side that's hiker only. There's 2 trails there too. The one we did, the Challenge Trail, which a cyclist told me there's no way they're getting up that, and they're and going down there terrifies them. It's so steep. So there's a lot there for people.
And plus, towards the end, we saw this big old family there and stuff. So it was exciting to see these brand new trails, this brand new state park, being used by hikers and mountain bikers, and just a day out for a family.
Yeah, that family was having just a great time. There was a little bridge across the creek there, and they were just having a good time, and just, it wasn't far up the trail. And we told them, well, they were like, where'd you guys go? We went all the way up to the top. How far is that? About 10 miles. How long did it take you? Well, we've been on the trail for, 3 or 4 hours. Somebody told me it was 45 minutes. I said, not with a jetpack is it 45 minutes.
It's not a 40, no.
Yeah, somebody giving them a line, and it was not an accurate one.
45 minutes to the top of Challenge Trail and back down, maybe, but...
On a bike, because that's 1.5 miles of very steep uphill.
Yeah.
And even 1.5 miles on flat terrain, you could do that in 45 minutes if you're moving along. But that, as steep as that was going uphill, highly unlikely. So I'm glad we were able to give them better information, because I could see them starting to go up there thinking it's 45 minutes. So no, it's about 2 hours to get all the way up there. But really a nice place. I'm really excited for how it is. And you mentioned, that as much as you like this, you're always looking for something new. My job as a writer is to find new places. Yeah. And to write about them and clue people in on new places. So for me, it's really exciting to find a place where there's a new trail, even if it's a new trail, that we build here in one of our city parks or county parks.
Yep, exactly.
That's exciting too. But when you find something as special as what Fisher's Peak is going to be, that's really, really a fun thing to find out. So I was really thrilled to get down there and I can't describe enough. I will do a column on it probably this coming weekend, so watch for that. But the views,
just stunning. Both
stunning views,
west and east.
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah.
Yeah, the views were great. The trail, we talked about the Challenge Trail was pretty steep, but it's called the Challenge Trail for a reason. But from there, the rest of the way up to what they call Osita Ridge, where that trail ended, and it's not the top of Fisher's Peak yet. The rest of that was really gradual and really pretty easy, and the Lone Cub trails were very nice. There was one trail on the other side called the Goldenrod Trail. We didn't have a chance to do that one. I'm going to do that when I go back down there pretty soon and hike that one, so I would have actually touched by then all the trails except for the bicycle-only trail. But really, well thought out. All the trails circle back to the trailhead, which I really like. So if you take Goldenrod or if you take the Lone Cubs, you can, continue. They all meet in one place up near the top of the Challenge Trail, which is kind of cool. And then they circle back around, so you can come. It's the only thing that was out and back was the Osita Ridge that we did to the point. Yeah. But then we came back to that corner, that intersection, and then we didn't have to go straight back down the way we came, and we didn't. We took another trail and took that down. So there's a lot of options there. Really, really nicely done. We ran into the trail builders. They're still kind of working on the tail end of the Osita Trail. They were great. They let us cut, hey, the governor opened the trail. I'm coming through here. But, we stayed out of their way, and they were very gracious and answered some questions for us. We don't want to tie them up. They're working. They got a job to do. But they were really cool to talk to, and it was a lot of fun.
Did you ever find out what that rock formation was at the intersection?
Not yet.
Okay.
But there's this they've obviously taken some very big rocks and made a circle out of them, and apparently there's going to be something that's going to go in there. I will have that answer when I do the podcast with the park manager.
Perfect. One
of the questions I have, inquiring minds want to know, as they say. But really a lot of fun. I'm glad you were able to go with me, Kevin, on that one. We were going to go on Saturday, And Saturday was nice, but really windy.
Yeah.
So I said, let's wait a day, and because the weather prediction was different. And sure enough, by the time we got down there Sunday, comfortable temperatures, beautiful blue skies, and no wind. So it was really a nice day for that hike. We couldn't have timed it. And I wake up this Monday morning, and it's cloudy, overcast, 30 degrees. I'm like, I don't know what this garbage is, but boy, am I glad I did that hike yesterday.
Yeah.
So it's all good. Everything was really cool. Anyway, can't endorse enough. Watch for a podcast coming up with the park manager. I'm not sure when exactly, but it will be within the next couple of weeks. I will have that on there to answer more questions about like what's next. I think pretty much, with winter coming, they're going to stop, as often happens in that, they're going to stop doing trail work and stuff until next spring or summer. And but their press release says a trail to the top by this time next year. And Kevin and I will go up there and we'll race everybody up there. No, we won't. Kevin's younger than me. He can race everybody up there. I'm not racing anybody. When I do a race like that, you time me with a calendar, not with a stopwatch. So
yeah.
So I'm not racing anybody up there, but I will race everybody to be the first one up there, the first one to go try the trail. Not even the first one to the top. I'm not going to make that happen. In any case. So anyway, Kevin, a lot of fun. We had a good time. I'm glad you were able to go with me. We had a really good time that day, and ran into a lot of nice people. Everybody we ran into was great. No conflicts. Not a lot of people there. It is a state park. There's a fee to go in and everything. I get that. But really was a fun day to be up there. Kevin, did you have any other, there was something else you wanted to talk about, I think, today.
Oh, just the news that came out today about the former chief of the Parks and Wildlife. I don't know a whole lot about it, but I mentioned to Bob, like there's a little bit of turmoil in the Parks and Wildlife, tangentially related to the outdoors, and I just didn't know if you had any thoughts on it. Or
Well, what happened was at a conference back in the spring, I want to say it was April, the head of Colorado Parks and Wildlife made some comments that were pretty unfortunate, directed at somebody who works for him in a public setting with a lot of outside people there. This is a conference. They're partners in the outdoors, I believe it's called. So a lot of groups and support groups and stuff from the outside that were there, made some comments that didn't go over well. And to be honest, and I'm a pretty thick guy. I was a firefighter for almost 40 years. There's not a lot that gets me a little upset. And I will tell you, firehouse humor is not necessarily for public consumption. Doesn't mean there's anything mean-spirited about it, but it's a way of blowing off stress. And obviously, we're very careful what we say in public. But this would have been, even in a fire station, probably would have been, I don't know that I would say.
Way over the line. It was, and he tried to backtrack it and saying, oh, no, I meant to, like, a commonly used phrase in the office or something like that.
Which is not helping.
Yeah. It's like, well, then that means there's a bad environment in the office. And such, yeah.
So shortly thereafter, that those comments came out, and I knew I wasn't at the conference, so I'll start off with saying with that next Monday after that conference was over, a weekend, I'm getting emails about this, and they're angry emails, and you kind of blow off a lot of really angry stuff because how much is true. But then I started talking to people who were there, and people I trust, and they're like, oh no, that's what happened, and I'm like, oof. So he was suspended. There was a big investigation. To nobody's surprise, he announced his retirement the other day. I think everybody saw the handwriting on the wall.
Yeah,
that was coming. It's difficult to recover from something like that. From what I was told, and I wasn't there, but people I trust said the apology the next day was almost as bad as the comments that were made the night before. They're just not that they were insulting.
Yeah,
but it was just not well done. So it was an unfortunate situation, and now they're going to be looking for a new head of Colorado Parks and Wildlife, who I think is appointed by the director of natural resources. The director of the Division of Natural Resources, which CPW falls under. So I'm not clear on how that works. I'm sure politicians will have their hands in it. It'll be kind of a process. Who knows what's going to happen next? As of the day we're recording this, there's just an interim director who's been the interim director since this whole thing started. And who knows what's going to happen next. But I think, if there's a takeaway from this, there's a lot of people who think that we've lost our opportunity to have a sense of humor. And I'm not going to say that that's not necessarily true, but that doesn't mean you just go out and say stupid stuff. Recognize that we've kind of changed our culture a little bit, And maybe that's that kind of questionable joke is, do you tell that in private to your friend who's going to get it? And that doesn't mean you're a bad person because you make a joke like that. But you're an idiot if you go say something like that in a room full of people who you don't know everybody who's in there.
Yeah.
But the first thing they tell comedians is know your audience.
Yep.
And this was a case of really not knowing your audience and really saying something unfortunate. And this is where we're at. This could have turned out a whole lot worse for this person, and it didn't. Being able to still retire, they're lucky they're able to do that. This could have been a whole lot worse. So it just, and I guess part of it is too is it was with the CPW for decades. I've always thought it was pretty rotten. And well, the guy's been there for 40 years. We're gonna fire him and take away his pension. That's kind of crappy. I mean, unless he's caught murdering somebody or something, I don't think you do that. What do you think? You think this is appropriate behavior? A result of this, or what do you think?
I'm not sure how I feel about the result, but like you mentioned, at least he got a chance to retire. But I think especially in the last few years, it's been very, very apparent what group of people dominates the outdoors. And I think we really need to have an honest discussion on why that is. And I've been told by friends who are not white and middle class, upper class, why they avoid the outdoors. And I'm sure a lot of it is due to attitudes that this guy may have had, like around the office and practice, and too in terms of processes and procedures. And maybe he kind of showed that he's not culturally aware enough to help make the outdoors more appealing in Colorado.
And even if the comments don't reflect his behavior, they certainly reinforce the feelings. Like you've had friends who are minority groups and stuff like that who don't feel welcome. Well, guess what? Your dumb comments just reinforced.
Yep, exactly.
What you're trying to tell people isn't the case. So it's not a good thing. And for crying out loud, it didn't make things better at a time when, they now have the CPW now has a grant program that is for bringing underrepresented groups.
That's right. I forgot about that.
Into the outdoors. So here you are talking about, let's get this program going. And then you make I don't think it's a stretch to say it was a racially charged comment. And what are you thinking? Even if that's not, people say, well, that's not the real me. Okay, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. There's a lot of people. You still made the comment. You're the head of the department, and you made it in front of a bunch of people that represent all different user groups, socioeconomic groups, ethnic groups. You make that dumb comment in front of a bunch of people like that. What do you think is going to happen?
Yeah. We had a situation at my work last year where someone just made a comment to a neighbor of ours about her appearance, which is you're on the job. It's someone you don't know, especially because it's someone you don't know. Like I have a coworker that I'm close friends with. We bonded outside of work. I can go up to her and say, "Hey, I love your dress today." This guy made a comment that was way worse than that to someone he does not know, and so he was let go that day. He was just being an idiot, but I'm sure that's the way he talked with his friends. And it's like you have to learn. What's the thing you just said about the comedian? Know your audience.
Know your audience. Yeah. And it's not even so much about having a lack of, people say people have lost their sense of humor. And not so much that, it just shows a lack of respect.
Yeah.
And so, that's the other issue is it's just you're not being respectful when you make dumb comments like that in front of people who you don't know what their attitudes are towards these kind of things. And I'm not saying anything about this person's work history. I never met him. They could have been a perfectly nice guy. He could have been just a swell person. But yeah, boy, can you sink your career in a hurry by making a comment like that, especially to somebody who the subject of this comment did not like it, and did not think it was very funny, and did not find it very appreciative at all. So, heck. So there's going to be new leadership at CPW eventually. The interim may end up becoming the director. Somebody else may become, I have no idea. I'm not part of this process. I have no clue. Things are going to change there, at least with that. And who knows what's going to happen next. Anything else, Kevin?
Nope. I'm set to go home and take a nice nap.
There you go, buddy. Okay. Well, with that, everybody will say thanks for listening to the Outdoors Hiking Bob podcast.
We'll talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Before you go, did you know you can rate and review our Studio 809 podcasts? That will help us because our egos really need to have thousands and thousands of listeners. But that helps our wonderful sponsors reach more ears too. And we do love our sponsors. So just go to Studio 809 or any individual 809 podcast in your iTunes or podcast app and click on ratings and reviews. Thanks.